Hey everybody, it's Paul Shirey, Arctic Ninja Paul, and I am here with my review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. But be warned, this is a three-part review. So actually I'm going to have an introduction portion where I'm actually going to talk about what Zack Snyder's Justice League actually is, for those that may not know. And then I'm going to give you kind of a short, condensed, spoiler-free review. And then I'm going to jump into a little bit more of a detailed response review / examination of the film before I close it up. So at any point, if you want to skip ahead, just take a look at the chapter breaks and you can jump forward, or you can skip forward if you want to just go ahead and miss something altogether. But that's the order of business for today. So I was just able to see the film on Saturday night. I watched it immediately. As soon as I got the streaming link, I jumped right into it, and that was my Saturday evening spoken for, happily and gladly. I was very excited, obviously, just like you guys are, to check out the movie, and I really feel like it's kind of my duty to share that with you guys at this point. However, the one thing we got to keep in mind here is that not everybody knows what Zack Snyder's Justice League is. It's something that I think probably you guys are seeing yourselves. It's a very common thing, is kind of your everyday audience members or your everyday people that are going to check this out on streaming don't have any idea what Zack Snyder's Justice League is. Okay, so they're seeing ads for it. They see it on HBO Max and they're like, wait a minute, didn't I see a Justice League movie a couple of years ago and it sucked? I'm like, well, yeah, you did. But this is something entirely different. So how do we let people know what Zack Snyder's Justice League is? All right, so let's just jump into it. Consider this your Cliff Notes education on how Zack Snyder's Justice League came to be and why you should care if you don't know anything about it. So back in around 2015, 2016, director Zack Snyder, who had made Man of Steel in 2013 and then Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice just after, was given the green light from Warner Brothers to direct not one, not two, but 3 Justice League films. Now, eventually that got condensed down to 2. It was going to be a Justice League Part 1 and Part 2, which probably would have been the best way to go. And Zack commenced production. During this time, the Batman v Superman reviews began to pour in. So while Man of Steel was hit with decent reviews and a pretty decent box office, Batman v Superman actually had really good box office. However, the critical reception was less than stellar. So this didn't bode well for Warner Brothers at the time. They were looking for basically Marvel-style hits. Marvel had already at this point edged their way in and were dominating the market, and DC was playing catch-up. So at this point, they were looking to up their game. And respectably so, why wouldn't you? Especially when you have this kind of IP on your hands. However, Marvel's movies typically got great critical reception. Even the ones that were fairly mediocre still did really well box office-wise, and they got great critical reception. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice did not. Ultimately, it's kind of the Empire Strikes Back of Zack Snyder's vision, actually. Most of his films are the Empire Strikes Back, to be quite honest, and that's not a bad thing at all. However, this left a bad taste in WB's mouth, so ultimately they wanted to rinse it out. But they had already greenlit Zack Snyder's Justice League, and he was well into production. So ultimately what they didn't want was another BVS debacle on their hands, with critics skewering it and box office being good but not as great as they had wanted with such an investment. Understandable to a certain degree, right? Now, Snyder, love him or hate him, is an auteur. He is a very passionate, he is a very, has a very distinct tone and a very distinct style, and he makes films that are 100% his vision. Which isn't to say he can't work within the studio system, but he absolutely knows what he wants to make. He is not the guy that you hire to make or crank out a run-of-the-mill superhero movie. It's just not that guy. But ultimately, because of the Marvel success and because of the BVS critical reception, Zack was being pressured to deliver a lighter, funnier, and I guess Marvel-y type movie, which is just not Zack's style. Zack knew that he had an uphill battle with Warner Brothers and that it was going to be an issue. And at one point, Warner Brothers hired Joss Whedon, the director of Marvel's The Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, to come into the fold to, quote unquote, help punch things up. Eventually, Zack, after he delivered a number of cuts to the studio, which they seemingly did not like, and had asked for a 2-hour cut, flat 2-hour cut of the film, Zack began to see that things were not boding well in his favor. Also, during this time, tragically and unfortunately, Zack's daughter, Autumn, committed suicide. Obviously, this is a very tragic, heartbreaking thing to deal for any person, a filmmaker or anyone, doesn't matter. Dealing with the death of a child is no small matter, and that was something that weighed heavily on Zack. He also had the business of dealing with making this, $200 million plus budgeted movie that was being asked to be skimmed and scaled down to a 2-hour piece of popcorn fluff. So, faced with battling with Warner Brothers and the grief and issues that come with dealing with a family tragedy, Zack decided to step away from the film in order to focus his energies elsewhere. Ultimately, you're going to wear somebody down only so far before they crack, and Zack just said enough and moved on. Once Zack moved on, Joss Whedon slid in and took his place. Joss's production ended up rewriting and reshooting about 70% or more of Zack Snyder's film, ultimately making it nowhere near what his intended vision was, let alone what his cuts were that he had submitted to the studio. Whedon's 2017 version injected a lot of humor and some silliness, made it very colorful, and gave it a kind of boring, run-of-the-mill hodgepodge score that really didn't serve the film in any manner. And ultimately, the movie flopped. So 2017's Justice League was a massive flop, a huge loss for Warner Brothers, given the time, effort, energy that they put into making it, let alone for the reshoots with Joss Whedon. Now, had they not even hired Joss Whedon and trusted Zack's vision, or at least gone ahead with it, even if they didn't really trust it, and just let it happen, would have saved them a lot of headache, heartache, and money. However, here we are now. So, what ultimately happened once Joss Whedon's film came out, which is credited as directed by Zack Snyder, but really directed by Joss Whedon, once that came out and flopped, ultimately fans, people that knew what was going on and knew what Zack had made and knew that there was something way better just languishing out there, they began the Release the Snyder Cut hashtag. That began to circulating through Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and pretty much anywhere you can post a hashtag. This hashtag kind of caught fire. It stirred fandom in a way that we haven't seen before. Some very, very positive voices and a few negative bad apples, but ultimately a very positive movement that simply wanted to see the fully realized version of an artist's work. Now, the way that they went about this is a unique and interesting way, because rather than just demand entertainment, the fans put the money where their mouth was, and they actually began to donate and raise money for suicide awareness in honor of Zack's daughter, Autumn. Now, this is an amazing thing, obviously, to put your energy into, especially in good faith to get something that you want. It didn't seem like that was necessarily going to move the needle. However, I believe on the anniversary of Release the Snyder Cut 2 years ago, the hashtag movement took a new turn when stars Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot joined this movement by retweeting Release the Snyder Cut as well. This captured the attention that was needed and got it all the way up to Warner Brothers, now under new management. And they basically approached Zack Snyder and said, hey, what do we need to do? Let's put your film out there. Now, obviously, they're not going to re-release this film in theaters, but they had a little ace in their hole, which is where you have been seeing ads for Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is HBO Max. So HBO Max is Warner Brothers' new streaming service and is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a huge part of their future, as it is a huge part of the entertainment industry's future, because we're all watching it and we're all using it. So HBO Max is looking to get into the game and to compete with the likes of Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, etc., and to make its mark. So here we have HBO Max, thirsty for good content and having a nearly completed film on their hands. They tapped Zack Snyder to finish his version, which basically amounted to doing a few minor reshoots and basically cleaning up the effects and adding new music, replacing Danny Elfman's score with Junkie XL, Tom Hokenborg, who was the original composer to be featured in the film. Zack was giving additional money as well to complete all of this, so a small investment to basically bring a 4-hour endeavor to the big screen. Now the small screen. So you may be thinking, 4 hours. There's a 4-hour Justice League movie. Why do I need that? Well, I mean, maybe you don't, but many people do. And you have to also look at the fact that now, well, up until this last weekend, the highest grossing movie of all time was Avengers Endgame, which was at a flat 3 hours or just over 3 hours. So the appetite for a big budget superhero movie being longer than 2 hours has come. It's not exactly a sticker shock to see that kind of time on a film. In fact, it's something that's much appreciated. And Zack Snyder's films have traditionally been longer films, or at least have been shot longer. Whatever they've been edited down to is another story. So what we have here is an uncompromised vision, fully realized by the director, that is 100% complete and leaves the door open to continue his vision if he so desired, or if Warner Brothers so desired, or if fans could make it happen again. So that, in a nutshell, is Zack Snyder's Justice League for those that are uninformed and just don't quite know. It is a scenario that we have not faced before, taking a film that basically was shot and completed and then chopped up and reshot and then finally getting the full version released. I can't think of another time in history when this has happened. So whether you love it or hate it or just don't really care, it is still an unprecedented film. And it's something that is definitely worth your time to take a look. Now, obviously, if you're a comic book fan, you have a better chance of loving it, but you don't have to be. So this could very well be for you. I highly recommend you check it out. And you could check out my review to follow and see if that still vibes with you. But ultimately, I think you will dig it. Another thing to note is that Zack Snyder shot this in a 1:33:1 format. So what does that mean? Well, when you see it, it's going to be a big square on your big widescreen TV. You're going to say, why are there black bars on the right and left? In short, Zack shot it in a wider format because he basically fell in love with the IMAX format, which, as you know, they fill the entire screen, which is a square. So you're basically taking a square and you're putting it into a rectangle. So you're actually getting the full screen of what he shot. If they were to put it in widescreen, they would have to cut a rectangle out of the middle of that and put it on. And I'll put a little handy graphic for you to see, so you can see what the hell I'm talking about if you're not tracking. But that will explain to you why it's a giant box. You don't need to call your cable provider or your internet provider or HBO Max and hit them up on Twitter and be like, what's wrong with my Zack Snyder's Justice League? There's nothing wrong with it. That's exactly how it's intended. So keep that in mind before you hit play. Now, let's take a look at the spoiler-free review. So you can take a look at this one. This is my real quick, down and dirty, what I thought of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And then we'll get into deeper stuff if you so desire, or you could just skip right to that now. But if you just want the spoiler-free stuff for now, here we go. All right, so this is the short version, and I'm actually going to read it to you guys, so you'll forgive me if I'm not looking directly at the camera as I put this out there, but I only had a day to prepare this, so but kind of under the gun to get it done. And I wanted to make sure to get it done so that you guys could get my thoughts, my reaction, and kind of go into Zack Snyder's Justice League a little bit more informed if you so desire. So here we go. For the spoiler-free crowd, Zack Snyder's Justice League is nothing short of amazing. It's a massively scaled superhero epic that leans into style, substance, and a genuine earnestness. It's built with care and precision, making for a passionate, detail-oriented, big-budget film that never sacrifices character for spectacle, while still delivering on the latter. It's a globe-trotting adventure, a superhero character study, and an exhilarating romp through the pages of DC mythology and lore. For those that are ready for something deeper, darker, lengthier, and more fleshed out than your standard comic book fare, Zack Snyder's Justice League is the film for you. The 4 hours breezes by, and for me, I would have sat there for 4 more if I could. Like the epic journey films set in Middle-earth or a galaxy far, far away, the original vision lays the groundwork for so much more, eclipsing the 2017 film and into a kind of edited for TV Frankenfilm that's made for toddlers. This is a definitive artistic vision that was ahead of its time, much like a lot of Zack Snyder's work, and it proves yet again that he is a superior filmmaking force to be reckoned with. All right, so that is your down and dirty version. If you're satisfied with that, cool, then you're ready to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. At least from my thoughts and my perspective, that should fill your cup right there. If you want to know more, if you want to get more in depth, stick around and go forward, and we'll jump right into that. If you don't want to know any more, now's the time to stop and move on. All right. If you guys are still here, we're going to get into it. All right, so bear with me. We got a lot to cover, and we'll see how long it takes. I don't have any idea. So first off, let's clear the air on exactly how different this version is from the 2017 film. It's completely different. So there's similar scenes that you'll recognize from the 2017 version. I'm going to guess, because I don't really know, somewhere between 15 and 20% of what you saw in the 2017 film is in this version. Maybe even less, because it's so chopped up and many of the scenes are extended or even cut down. There is so much character work being done and shining a new light, not only on the heroes, but the villains as well. In addition, like, all the supporting players get so much more screen time and so much more weight added to their stories. So it is completely new. It is a completely new film. The 2017 version just doesn't even compute. The film is broken down into 6 different chapters, so something to keep in mind when you start watching. You'll see the little chapter things come up on screen, so that's actually a good time to take a pause and maybe do a bathroom or snack break at that time. So keep those in mind. I think they're about every 40 minutes or so, something like that, something in that range. So keep that in mind as you hit play. Well, for starters, that whole awkward opening with Superman talking to the kids and Batman on the rooftops, gone. That's all Whedon stuff. None of it's there. Nothing that Whedon shot is in Zack Snyder's version. Nothing. So that's gone. We basically start off with the ending of Batman v Superman, where Superman is killed and he's yelling, and basically he is awakening the mother boxes with his death yawp. And that is where we begin Zack Snyder's Justice League. So this reaches out all the way to Themyscira and also to Atlantis, and it begins to rattle the mother boxes and awaken them, which is ultimately the driving force behind the film. So I'm going to touch on different subjects specifically as I go throughout this. It's a long film. There's a lot to unpack, so I'm just going to hit it by subject and kind of give you my thoughts. So that's how we're going to tackle this, just so you know going forward. First up, Wonder Woman. That opening scene with Wonder Woman from the 2017 film, fairly tame. You could see some of the shots in there that were absolutely Zack Snyder shots. There's a few bits of those in there. This is not the Wonder Woman of Wonder Woman 1984. This is a Wonder Woman that is quick, concise, and violent. The opening sequence of her thwarting the robbery not robbery, but rather the terrorist activity has more action in that sequence than the entirety of Wonder Woman 1984, if that gives you any indication of what you're in for. And there's much more to follow with Wonder Woman throughout the film. She also uses her sword and shield throughout the film, so I guess all the peace, love, and 80s vibes from Wonder Woman 1984, they simply don't apply here. She decided to pick up that sword and shield again. Good for her. This is Wonder Woman, the Amazon warrior, not Wonder Woman, the chick that gives speeches to the world. The Amazon mother box scene. So the scene where the mother box is awakened in Themyscira and you have all the Amazons guarding. That was a much shorter scene in the 2017 version. Here it is widely expanded, and you really get a better sense for the Amazons. They feel way more personalized, and I really got a lot of 300 vibes from this sequence. It really does show them at battle in Zack Snyder's style, and it's much longer. The whole thing of them trying to get the mother box out of that facility and get it away from Steppenwolf is huge, and it's bloody and violent. And when Steppenwolf arrives, this is not the pale-faced Freddy Krueger version that we got in the 2017 film. This is a beastly, gangly, spiky, like, monstrosity with a deep, gravelly voice, done brilliantly by Ciaran Hinds, and he is devastating. And he kills the shit out of some Amazons. And they put up a hell of a fight, but they're just no match for him. And this is just hell and gone different than the sequence we saw in the 2017 film. It's amazing. Which brings us to Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf, night and day from the Steppenwolf that we had in the 2017. I'm going to say 2017 film like 1,000 times. So just settle in. He is amazing in this. Like, this is Thanos level type character. The VFX are so vastly different, and it gives him much more character. Also, he's an alien. So why would they make him more and more human, which is what Whedon did? It doesn't make any sense. And it's, oh my God, it's so much better. It's just so much better. And, you get a feeling for who he is as well, and what his ultimate mission is, which ultimately is to get Darkseid to Earth and to redeem himself in Darkseid's eyes, because he's kind of betrayed him and screwed him over. So now he's trying to take over Earth, basically to help Darkseid get there. It's a much better explanation and a much better story than we had in the 2017 film. And it feels like, you actually understand his motives and his desperation and his viciousness in getting what he wants, which is all 3 mother boxes. Darkseid. So we've been waiting for Darkseid forever. We've been teased with him since the trailer for this earlier in the summer, last summer. And he is not just a guy sitting on a throne for the whole movie. So Darkseid even gets in on the action, particularly in the history lesson portion. And even when it's current times, we still get more. You get actual dialogue from him. You get information from him. And there's so much more of Darkseid. It's very obvious that he was being set up to be the key villain of this story before Whedon came in, and they just basically cut that angle completely and gave it all to Steppenwolf, which was just super, super lame. But Darkseid, he looks great as played by Ray Porter. I'm not sure who does the voice, if it's still Ray or not, but it's a great voice. And he, for all intents and purposes, is the Thanos of the DC universe, although he was introduced before Thanos. He was introduced before. So anyways, Darkseid is amazing in this. He looks great. He looks scary as shit. And you get all types of little Easter eggs of Darkseid, which I won't spoil. But there's a lot of great stuff, and he just looks perfect. He looks amazing. You really get a sense for what was being set up for Darkseid in future films. And that just leaves you salivating for more. So let's talk about Cyborg. Cyborg in the 2017 film was kind of relegated to a one-note character with one-liners and was lame. Not by any means was that Ray Fisher's fault. And you can see now kind of why Ray Fisher is a bit pissed and a bit miffed about the way he was treated, because they ultimately really left his character on the cutting room floor. They chopped him up worse than he was actually chopped up to become Cyborg. So it is, this is pure redemption for Cyborg's character. You get a far more involved origin story, where he started, who he was, how he becomes Cyborg, his relationship with his father and his mother, and ultimately you get a very tragic story, none of which was in the 2017 film. And it's a travesty that was just tossed aside. You're introducing a brand new superhero character, and we learn almost nothing about him. And it's pretty sad. It's too bad. But this film really dives into that, and it's not all peachy keen, which is great and very Zack Snyder. Zack knows how to play with your emotions in that way, and this film absolutely does that. And Cyborg, he's not only the heart of the story, but he's also kind of the tragedy of the story too. It's also to note that Joe Morton, who plays his father, has a much bigger role in this. I think he has like maybe two or three scenes in the 2017 film, but he's far more involved, not just with Cyborg, but also with Superman's ship. He is obviously a scientist, and, the father-son dynamic is played up heavily in here. And it provides, again, some much-needed heart and a very interesting dynamic that's, it's compelling. It's to watch these two interact and to see where their conflict comes from. It's great, and it's a welcome addition. Plus, Joe Morton is awesome. He's Joe Morton. Aquaman. So Aquaman was introduced in this film. However, Aquaman has already had his own solo film, which takes place after the events of this film. And, there's actually more changes from Aquaman than anything else, any other character in this film. And a lot of that stems from really small, minor details, but they still kind of pain. Not in a way that's going to distract or stop you from, being able to enjoy Aquaman, the solo film, and this film. But there's a few key notable things. One of those is Aquaman still has those green contact lenses in his eyes, which I thought was a creative choice in the beginning, but one that ultimately director James Wan dropped when he made Aquaman, and rightfully so. I think that they're distracting and unnecessary, and it's a much cooler effect when his eyes kind of go yellow underwater. I thought so. It's a welcome change, and probably one Zack would have happily, assuaged to if there was some kind of connection that he was working on at that time. Anyways, the green eyes are still there, and it's a little distracting. The other thing too is Mira. So Mira and also Volko are both introduced. Mira, as played by Amber Heard, shows up in this film, and the one key difference here, the suit looks the same, but the one key difference is she has like a British accent, which is totally gone in Aquaman. So that's a little distracting. You're like, wait, why is she doing a bad British accent? But there she is. She she does it in every scene. I thought maybe it was just like, just be a little thing, like a brief almost exploration of that. But no, she's going full British. And then for Volko, who's played by Willem Dafoe, just as he is in the Aquaman movie, looks vastly different. He's more Gandalf-y, I would say. He's got very long, like gray hair. It comes down to his shoulders. It's just really messy and kind of like grungy. And his costume is way more ornate. Whereas in the Aquaman movie, he's got like the underwater man bun and a way more sleek, like dark suit. So something, there just obviously wasn't a connection there. Zack probably wasn't talking to James Wan when he was making his film, and that's just what it is. But ultimately, they're not huge, issues that are going to cause any strife between watching both films. But it is an interesting note to look at that. I guess another thing, too, is you do see the trident later. You do see kind of like future visions of Aquaman, and he's not wearing the traditional gold and green suit. And the trident looks very, very different. So, there's some like slight variations there, but they're not going to mess with your enjoyment of the film. Batman and Alfred. So Batman / Bruce Wayne, he is way more chill, I want to say, in this, but he's also, the angsty version that was in BVS. He's calmed down. The death of Superman has changed him. He still has that burning, passion to bring this team together, which is fueled by the death of Superman, and he's seeking redemption. So he's no longer going out there trying to angrily hurt people. He's out there like, shit, I got to make up for this, and this is the only way I can honor this man's death. So you definitely see it's a shift in persona, but one that's earned and one that's understood based on what happened in BVS. So it's cool, and it's, it makes perfect sense. However, the good news is, as for when he's Batman, he gets in on the action. It's not just Batman using vehicles, although he does use a lot of vehicles in this, but Batman gets out and kicks some serious ass. A lot of you, like me, love the warehouse scene in BVS. I think it's probably the best Batman action sequence ever put to film. And this one has him doing very similar stuff to Parademons, but not only just beating the crap out of them, but also blowing them to smithereens with like the laser kind of pulse rifle that he has. And you may think, well, it's a laser gun, but this laser gun kind of reduces them to ash or blows them to bits or blows them apart. So it's pretty bloody, pretty violent, pretty vicious, and Batman just slays the shit out of them. It's a beautiful thing, and you'll love it. And then as for Alfred, once again played by Jeremy Irons, you have a whole lot more involvement with him. And Jeremy Irons kind of serves as like the Jiminy Cricket to Batman's Pinocchio in this one, and is constantly kind of challenging Bruce Wayne to make sure that his thought process is right, because Bruce Wayne is so unflinchingly chasing these metahumans to form this team. And now you have Jeremy Irons kind of saying, well, maybe I'm not sure if we should be doing this. Are we doing the right thing kind of thing? But ultimately, he continues to be helpful and to support him. And we see a lot of kind of Jeremy Irons, Alfred, designing new tech. So he's kind of like, not only is he Alfred, but he's kind of the Lucius Fox of this story, too. They kind of combined. So it's a cool dynamic. It's a good relationship to see Bruce and Alfred working together, and there's just a lot more of them, so that's good. The Flash. The Flash is by far my favorite character in Zack Snyder's Justice League. There's a number of reasons why, but ultimately we get so much more of him. So first off, we get the extended sequence that wasn't even, or not even extended, it wasn't even there in the 2017 version, but we get the sequence of the Flash saving Iris West, played by Kiersey Clemons, and who will reprise her role in the Flashpoint movie that's about to go into production soon. What's weird, she doesn't say anything. I don't remember her saying anything. I think maybe there's like a brief exchange as she's leaving a place. It's mostly like just kind of like, sexy eyes that they're giving each other. And then this whole slow motion car accident sequence with some brilliant music that's played underneath. And it's just a lot of great songs in this film for different sequences that you'll really enjoy, I think. For those of you that get impatient when you have longer sequences with music playing, maybe you'll hate them. Me personally, I love that shit, so I'm all about it. But it's a great sequence, and it really gives you a little more depth into who the Flash is. And you get another sequence between him and Billy Crudup, who's playing his father. Way longer sequence, and it's a more in depth. It gives you a little more of a tragic dialogue that we didn't get before, which I think is great. That makes for just a more interesting movie, a more interesting character, and it gives Barry Allen more of an arc. But what I loved most was the display and use of Barry Allen's Speed Force powers. Zack Snyder really leans into the Speed Force here, and we see the Flash utilize those powers in a variety of different ways. And there's one sequence in particular at the end final battle that I absolutely love. It is the coolest sequence for me of the whole film, and I think it speaks metaphorically on many different levels, which I don't want to spoil, and I'm curious to hear what other people think when they watch it. But I think it goes even deeper, like down to Zack's feelings about the film itself. So I'm interested for you guys to see it and hear what you have to think. But it's absolutely my favorite part of the film. And the Junkie XL score, which I also have to mention here, is phenomenal. And the music that's playing underneath that sequence is awesome. And I can't wait to just listen to it on its own. It's great. It's so damn good. I'm so happy we got Junkie XL back, because whatever that, freaking greatest hits album that Danny Elfman made, who is normally a great composer, for the 2017 version was a travesty. And Junkie XL he knocks it out of the park. I feel like Junkie XL scored this knowing that he was scoring something special. Lois Lane and Martha Kent. So Amy Adams is back and Diane Lane is back playing the respective roles. Gone is that awful Daily Planet scene where they meet up. God, it was terrible. I'm so glad that's gone. However, they do meet again a number of times, and we see a way more, as we should, a way more grief-stricken Lois Lane, who is dealing with the loss of her love, of somebody she was going to marry, and you see that played out a lot more, and you see her dedication to Superman and his memory, and how she continues to honor that, but how she's ultimately withdrawn from her life otherwise. And it takes a special someone to come in and nudge her in the right direction, which is probably one of the best holy shit moments of the movie, and I won't spoil it. But it's a great moment, and I know you guys, when you watch it, you're going to be like, whoa, so good, so good. But it's great to have Lois back. It's great to have Martha back. And, it's great to see Lois in this movie. She's always being rescued while she's falling from Superman. And this time she's rescuing him while he's rising. So it's a very interesting duality that's happening in this film, and something that's built its way up to it. So it's an earned moment. It's an earned kind of a relationship. And I dig that. So Superman, why haven't I mentioned Superman yet? Why did I wait so long? Well, Superman, they don't even start really talking about him or involving him till 2 hours into this movie. That's right. 2 hours and we haven't even seen Superman, and it's all great. Trust me, it's gravy. But ultimately, they make the decision to bring him back using the mother box. And that sequence actually wasn't the worst sequence in the 2017 film. And it has some similarities here, but it also has some really great stuff that was not there. And everything is enhanced. If there's anything you saw in the Whedon version, which there's little pieces here and there, everything that you see now in this is far more enhanced. But ultimately, Superman, he does not make his return until much, much later in the film. And it's great to see him back. And so you do have the confrontation at the memorial. And some of that is similar to what we saw in the 2017 version, which was Zack Snyder's work. But it plays out way differently, especially the confrontation between Superman and Batman. Gone are those, super stash scenes with cringy dialogue and stupid shit. It's an earned moment and a great moment, and one that ultimately goes in the direction it should have gone the first time. But then we also get Superman ultimately, addressing or hearing from the father figures in his life while he dons a new costume, which in this version is the long-awaited black costume. And that is a rousing, awesome moment because it's one that we've been waiting for so long as fans. I mean, I was reading The Death of Superman and The Return of Superman in the comics as a kid. I'm still reading comics. And I mean, those were the things that were like, man, could you imagine seeing that? Could you imagine seeing that? So, it's simple things like that is, introducing a costume that we've been dying to see makes all the difference. And it's amazing. It's amazing to see that suit in action. It's amazing to see him confront Steppenwolf and beat the shit out of him when he shows up. And, gone is all the kind of silly dialogue like, is this guy still bothering you? It's Superman coming in there and laying some serious whoop ass on this guy and fucking him up pretty good, to be honest with you. And there's far more teamwork amongst them. But, out of everybody, I think Superman, his return is huge, but his role isn't quite as huge as everybody else's in this finale. But that's how it's built, and that's how it should be. But, he ultimately saves the day, but it still took everybody to completely save the day. All right, so one of the most common questions I continue to get after talking about seeing the movie is how different is the history lesson, which is where Wonder Woman is talking to Bruce Wayne in the Batcave, and they're basically talking about the origins of Darkseid. The history lesson is huge. It's way bigger. It's way more violent. It's got more characters than were highlighted before, and it is awesome. You get a much better look at the Green Lantern in battle. You get a closer look at him altogether. You get a better look at the other players that are there, including a familiar face from Wonder Woman, which is Ares, the god of war. Now, it did not look like it was David Thewlis playing the role, but it had a similar kind of look, but yet a different kind of look, which is a little more akin to the comics version. And you'll probably think of him a lot differently the next time you watch Wonder Woman after seeing what he does during this history lesson sequence, which is super badass. It is a bloody scene. It is a violent scene, and it's epic. And it's probably one you may just go rewatch it right away after you see it. Another common question is the R rating. How R-rated is Zack Snyder's Justice League? Well, it's certainly darker, and it's more violent than the 2017 film. Up to including deaths with beheadings and eviscerations and lasers and explosions and one vaporization, maybe more. Ultimately, it feels like a violent video game by those standards, not exactly some hardcore R-rated, like, say, RoboCop style movie. There's a few F-bombs, but not that many, and they're not really like sexual F-bombs, I guess, in that way. And there's not an overabundance. There's no nudity other than some scantily clad Amazons and a topless Jason Momoa and Henry Cavill, which I don't think you're going to have many complaints. But ultimately, the film does benefit from, having to cut away where they normally would allow and let you feel more immersed in the proceedings and all their bloody, foul-mouthed glory. The other thing about the R rating is that, the superheroes are absolutely dispatching the parademons by killing them. They're not rounding them up with lassos. They're not tying their hands behind their back. They are straight up murdering them. They are being killed one by one and by the dozen at a time. And, I don't know what else you would do. I think you're probably going to hear some people complain that oh, look at all these superheroes just running around killing parademons, parademon rights. I mean, I don't know what else they would want Justice League to do. I mean, they want them to call a social worker to the scene. I don't know what else you can do. So ultimately, I think that's a pretty silly complaint if that is one that does rear its ugly head. But this is what it takes. You know, you're fighting thousands of these things. There's only so many handcuffs. The nightmare sequence. So I think probably a lot of you are looking forward to the nightmare sequence more than anything. I get it. That's totally understandable. It's pretty amazing. There's actually 2 nightmare sequences. So there's one just before the resurrection of Superman where Cyborg is jacked into the ship and he starts to get these visions, kind of these futuristic visions, which are pretty dark and pretty messed up and kind of show the fate of some of our heroes. And it creates a new level of, God, I'm trying to say this without spoiling it. Let's just say it's an awesome sequence and it's a good tease for the overall nightmare sequence. So you have that, and then it's basically the second to last scene is this newly shot. I'm assuming everything is newly shot for this end sequence, which has Deathstroke and Mira and Cyborg and Batman, and of course Jared Leto's Joker. The interaction between Bruce Wayne's Batman and Jared Leto's Joker is amazing. It's one that I had hoped they would tap into this aspect of it, which is the tragedy and the violent dynamic between those two characters. And it's awesome. It's so great. And it sets up things that I'm just like, holy shit, do I need to see where this goes? It's kind of it hints at a lot of their history and ultimately their future. And that is fucking awesome. Like this is like that scene, like this is what I'm here for. And everyone I've spoken to that's seen the film is like, whatever happens next is the movie I want to see. I want to see that next. So those of you that are really excited for that nightmare sequence, you go ahead and be excited. Jared Leto reprising the character is great. He's not quite as, I don't know, weird as he was in Suicide Squad. I didn't really have that big of a problem with him. And who knows what his character fully is, and if we ever see the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. It's probably much more to his performance, but he's great here. He's kind of reserved and just like way more maniacal and just freaky looking in a great way. So I think you guys are going to dig it. It's really cool. And it just sets up like the nightmare sequence is where things really get set up for like the movie we all want to see next. And I hope that we do. The final battle sequence, all I can say about the final battle sequence without spoiling anything, which would be just for me to recount every action moment, is that it's just action-packed. It's full of action. Zack Snyder, speed ramping, slow-mo, these beautifully, balletic style action sequences that Zack Snyder does so well. It's all there. And they do it as a team. They fight as a team. You feel like you're watching the Justice League, not just a bunch of heroes run around. It is a sight to see. I love it. I can't wait to watch it again. And it features, again, my favorite moment from the entire film, which has the Flash, again, utilizing his Speed Force powers. And it's awesome. And Junkie XL's score just really ramps up here. There's I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to say it. There's cool moments that I think everyone is really going to walk away from feeling good about. And that's it. That's the final battle. So those are my overall thoughts. Again, I've only watched the movie once and skimmed through once more to kind of refresh a little bit for this review. I'm absolutely going to be watching this movie again. I'm going to be watching this movie multiple times. I'll watch it in IMAX when it's out. This is the kind of shit that I'm here for. I've always been a Zack Snyder fan. I've been a Zack Snyder fan since particularly 300, where his style just blew me away. I'm not a crazy acolyte. I don't love everything he's done. Well, I love everything really except for Sucker Punch. It's the only one that I don't love, but I still like it quite a bit. But in the end, I'm just a fan, okay? I love his work. He's an artist. He makes great art. I love his art. I love his work. And that's it. It inspires me. I also like and respect Zack Snyder for seeing his vision through and not compromising. And that's ultimately what this is. He left the film. He didn't want to fight Warner Brothers over it. He had a tragedy in his own family. And he said, it's not worth it. The fight's not worth it. And I'm not going to just sit here and just give everything up. And, he held strong and fans supported him. And I think it is a joint effort that made something really special. And at the end of the day, it's a one of a kind. Not only is it an epic superhero film told in uncompromising vision, it's got style, it's got atmosphere. It's a film that shows the power of fandom and, you know, how it can champion art. So while opinions may vary on the final film from person to person, there's simply no denying the unprecedented nature of what this is and what it means. I mean, this whole thing, it not only opens the door for the future of Snyder's Justice League, but the future of entertainment as we know it. Naturally, this will rest on how well it performs, how many subscribers HBO Max gets and keeps. Key word there. But judging by like the hype alone, I expect Zack Snyder's Justice League to champion a whole new era of superhero films and help to inspire future artists, not only to follow their hearts, but to be unwavering in their commitment to their own vision. And I think that is kind of like a bigger lesson that I take from Zack Snyder's Justice League and what not only the film, but the movement means in general. And I think, you know, finally, what we need to do for those that want to continue to see more films is that we need to, you know, continue to show our support. We need to do so in a positive way because it's the positive stuff that got us to this point, and it's the positive stuff that'll get us moving forward. Hitting up Warner Brothers and saying, "Oh, you guys made a big mistake." It's a business, and businesses have to make judgment calls sometimes, and sometimes they're the wrong calls. And we don't all, you know, have a crystal ball where we can see how things are going to work out. Who amongst us has not made a bad decision, or a decision, not even necessarily a bad one, a decision that we thought was right and then in hindsight was totally wrong? The best thing you can do now is reach out and support great art. And that's what this is. That's what it's born of. And I love seeing that being pushed forward. And I hope that it just inspires a whole new generation of artists to do their thing. So that's it. That's my review. Those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope. I'm so fucking excited for you guys to see this movie. I feel, honestly, like I feel so lucky to have seen it early. And I hate it. Sometimes it makes me feel like a braggart or something. And that's terrible. I don't want to feel that way. I wish like I could just beam it out to everybody right now. I don't have that power. I was lucky to be able to see it myself. And I understand that luck. And I'm grateful for that. And I really hope that you guys just have a great time with this movie and that you get excited about it and that it meets your expectations. I know so many of you are just going to be absorbing it over and over and over again for days right off the bat. And I think that's great. So enjoy it. Enjoy it. This is a gift. This is a win. Enjoy the win. I'm Paul Shirey, Arctic Ninja Paul, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Oh, make sure to subscribe and like and hit your notifications. Have a great day. Bye.